So there are some studies that say that this guy said he's going to be a president a long time ago. Like he had aspirations on wanting. So it's not like it happened once he started making money. Where does this motivation come from for this ambitious guy? You study his parents. One was a teacher. It's
one
not
was
like,
a farmer.
one was a farmer. Like what is the fire? Where is that fire coming from? Did you see some stuff that maybe we don't know about?
The famous photo, and I think too he was shunned by the Colombian government because he was an associate, they call him suplentes, congressman, and I think it was Galan, Luis Carlos Galan, who found out he was a trafficker. So he was ousted. So, I mean, he is publicly embarrassed by the Colombian government. So you're ousting me, I'll show you. In my opinion, that's all it was. I'm gonna show you. You disgraced me.
When you go back to Alexander, you study that he had a father that kind of was a drunkard, and he wasn't around, and his mother would feed a lot of stuff into his mind. One day you're gonna be this, one day you're gonna conquer the world, one day you're gonna do this part. And he had a very interesting combination between his mom and his dad, right, on who he became.
Right.
There was an Aristotle that was feeding into his mind on how to be a leader. So there was a perfect combination of three different characters in his life. Do you know of people that were in his ear that were, because I know his wife would always say, you can one day be a president, you can one day be a president, but who else was in his ear?
His mother was the main, his father really wasn't involved. He was a farmer, kept to his, cows. It was the mother who always kept telling him what to do. The wife was also, she knew about the business, of course, but I think it was more of his mother telling him the directions of what he needed to do.
Well, I was thinking just earlier before that, as he's just coming up as a fledgling criminal, I think he realized how much money there was to be made in the drug business and how simple it was. His first reported drug deal was for, I think it was 17 kilos. And the person, when he saw how quickly he could move that, how much money he could make, he went and killed that person. So that stepped him up one ladder, one rung on that ladder towards the top of the ladders, which is where he wanted to go. Now, what helped him is he had no remorse, he had no compunction, he had no guilt feelings whatsoever about killing people. He was just doing business. And so when you've got that type of, that psyche and that mentality, I think that had a lot to do. And then as you get more powerful and more wealthy, you think you're important now. And that's where he decided, okay, now I want to move into Congress. Now I want to be president. Now I want this, now I want that.
The only reason I ask is because sometimes you see, you look at Frank Lucas from American Gangster, the movie. Right. He had his boss that was putting a lot of inspiration into him. He had somebody to watch. Who was Pablo's example? Like, who was Pablo following to say, I'm following this guy's footsteps? Was there anybody?
Yeah, in the history of the cartel, you had Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, who was more powerful than Pablo Escobar, was richer, because Gacha had taken over the emerald business. There's a famous massacre in Colombia, everybody knows about it, where he killed off the competition, Gilberto Molina. So he took over that. And how Gacha came up with the concept of the cocaine labs in Colombia. So after Gacha gets killed, Pablo takes over that organization. But my question has always been, how does Pablo rise to that CEO when you're dealing with the most major traffickers in Colombia, right? You got the most ruthless, you got the biggest, baddest traffickers. How do you become boss?
Is that still a question? Is it still a question till today for you, or no?
Yes,
has that been answered?
It is, because that has always been my question. How did he rise?
Got it. So
you have other major traffickers all listening to Pablo Escobar.
See, that's what I'm
Wow,
because if you look at the Cali brothers, you knew they were just driven by money. They were business guys. So to them, it was a different story, right? And sometimes for people, it's just money, fame is all it is. Very few people have that big of an aspiration like a Pablo does. It has to be something deeper. By the way, what happens if Pablo doesn't have the aspirations of running for office? Does his legacy continue? Or would it eventually still stop? Let's just say Pablo says, you know what? I don't want to run for office. I want to be a low-key guy. I just want to take these 15 facilities that I have that were producing cocaine, a ton of cocaine a day. Let's make it 30, let's make it 40, let's make it 50. Maybe let's go to other countries. Let's make it in different places. How much bigger would he have gotten if he had zero aspirations of being a political leader?
I think he would never have been capable of doing what you're suggesting. Says, let me do low key, because that ego he had, that personality, when you study him, when you listen.
There inside his custom built prison, he had a Salvador Dali original probably worth a couple $1 million hanging on the wall. There's a famous artist in Colombia, Fernando Botero, who's extremely well known. He has a Botero original hanging on the wall. It's worth about $1.5 million. And this was in 1991, 1992.
Right. As Steve mentioned before, that charisma he had, that is very accurate. He'd go down and he would recruit his own sicarios. A lot of people do not know that. Yeah, there was a famous
He would
church.
convert, right? He would convert a lot of people.
There was a famous Catholic church in Medellin, one of the poorest neighborhood churches, and he would have meetings and he would come in. And all these young thugs, 14, 15-year-olds, they'd hug him, he'd kiss them, give him money. And that was the allegiance, that was, you're the biggest trafficker and you're going down yourself.
That's interesting what you're saying.
That just shows that personal, what you're talking about, that ego, that
and here's the
personality.
scenario. So he goes into this neighborhood where people are literally living on the edge of a trash dump. That's where their food comes from. That's where their clothing comes from. Their cardboard and pieces of wood that they create a little living shelter. He comes in and he builds low-cost housing and lets people live there for free. He provides them with food. He builds medical clinics, soccer fields. He gives them money. He gives them food. So think about it. Now, if you come from a situation like that, now all of a sudden your mom's got a roof over her head. She's got a lock on her door. So you get a little bit of security. You got running water. You've got electricity. What are you going to think about the guy?
But I mean, this isn't anything new, right? If you want to get the vote, go get all the poor people and give them free food, give them free place to live, and you're going to get their votes.
And so here's the point. That's not a Robin Hood, which that's the persona everybody seems to want to portray him. He wasn't a Robin Hood for these people. He manipulated those people because when he needed his new sicarios, where did he go back to?
There is a part of it where this whole Robin Hood theory came about because I think when Pablo died, 25,000 people showed up and they just wanted to touch his face. They wanted to. He was like glorified when he passed away.
They broke the coffin out of the morgue. They paraded him on the streets.
Does that make you upset when you see that? Like,
it doesn't, because I mean, this is history. It happened.
It doesn't now.
Well,
or
I mean,
it doesn't
no.
at that time.
No, at that
emotionally,
time.
you're so
emotionally,
vested.
we lost a lot of friends that were killed by Pablo Escobar. And the innocent people, I hated Pablo Escobar, but people love him. You know what? It's a way of life. Colombia's a safe country. It's a beautiful place.
Medellin, people are so
beautiful
nice,
people. And you know what? We got to say, 99.9% of Colombians are great, innocent, hard-working people. It's that little 1% of the traffickers that ruin it, But
Still
Medellin,
till today, is a lot of it still today or no?
Yep, and you know what? We don't tell too many people, but we, visit Medellin. The only thing you cannot do in Medellin, do not badmouth Pablo Escobar in Medellin.
Till today.
He still has a lot of loyal followers.
Till today.
Till today.
Wow. So the legend continues.
Still love him.